I like that you have like the old school, like almost looks like the 360 panda as your Discord picture.
Dude, I think if you Google like panda logo or something, this might be one of the first things that pops up on Discord. I've had this Discord picture for like whenever I made my Discord account, I was just like, well, I need a picture of a panda, and I just never changed it.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, hello everybody, by the way, and welcome to the next episode of the Roadman Podcast. This is like episode 8 or 9 or something. I don't actually know. But anyway, today with me I've got Arrrash. How you doing, my man?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to be on.
Perfect. So, the first thing I wanted to ask was just to get to know you a bit better. So, what's your sort of like bread and butter with Halo? Like, do you like making Forge maps? Are you a custom games guy? Like, what's your big thing in Halo, and what do you kind of want to see going into Halo Infinite?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm just a matchmaking kid, man. I just love to hop into matchmaking and play games, and more so in the past I used to love really grinding ranked, especially like in OG Halo 3 or even like Halo 5. I've I've fallen off that a bit lately just because it's kind of difficult, especially on PC, to find matches in like ranked and MCC, but I still love to play ranked, or even when I can't find ranked matches, like I'll just sit there and I'll just play social, whatever, social 4v4,
Oh yeah.
social BTB. But yeah, no, I'm just a big matchmaking person. I mean, I like custom games. I play them occasionally. Admittedly, I used to play a lot more custom games back on the 360, just because I felt like back then there was so much more, and maybe it's just because I'm not as in touch with it anymore. But back then, like I'd hop on to Halo 3, and I'd be playing matchmaking with a friend or two, or maybe by myself, and you would just get invites like all the time for all these different custom lobbies. Or if you were in the mood to play customs, you just launch up a lobby and just invite your whole friends list, and you could just fill up a lobby. And I feel like that's something that doesn't really happen as much these days, and maybe that's just because the people I talk to and I'm friends with now don't do that as much. But so I've definitely fallen off of like, I'll still occasionally play custom games. Like sometimes we try and set up custom game nights and things like that on my Discord. But yeah, for the most part these days, it's mostly just I just play matchmaking. I'll play the campaigns of a Halo game when they come out, like once or twice. But besides that, other than Halo 3, just because I remember playing the Halo 3 campaign a ton to get all the different achievements to unlock all the armors and whatnot, I really don't dive back into the campaigns too much after I finish them once or twice. Like the Halo 5 campaign, the first week or so that Halo 5 came out, one of my buddies that I had been playing like Counter-Strike with at the time, I got him to get Halo 5 because he had an Xbox that he just wasn't using, and we played through the campaign in one night. I think it took like 4 hours or 4.5 hours because
Yeah.
the campaign's kind of short. Never launched another Halo 5 campaign level.
I was just talking to Gamer Gains and Custom Chief earlier, and I was just saying that I still now go back and play like my favorite Halo 3 or my favorite Halo Reach campaign missions every now and then. Halo 5, I've never replayed a mission.
Yeah, the Halo 5 campaign just it doesn't really do it for me.
And in regards to custom games, I actually put out a video a while back about it's called Halo 5 Custom Browser was ruined by the players. Basically, it's about how the custom browser was a beautiful concept to sort of like, it should have been the peak of custom games, but how it kind of just got like polluted over time, and now all you can find on it is like clan stuff and assassination tower and like stuff like that, where I feel like custom games really peaked in like Halo Reach, and Halo 3 was like the glory days of Halo customs. So hopefully Infinite can kind of bring us back to that.
Yeah, actually, so I've fallen off of Xbox Halo 5 like well before they implemented the custom game browser. But yeah, one of my friends recently was telling me, because I was talking about how I was excited the custom game browser was coming to MCC on PC. Just for some background, these days I basically just play on PC, so that's why I don't play much Halo 5 or anything like that anymore. But so I
Sure.
was talking about how I was excited it was coming to PC because I'll get to play custom games here and there when I want to. And he's like, I don't know about that. It's probably just going to be nothing but like clan recruitment and just like 1 or 2 game modes. And that's basically all you're going to find. And I had heard that, but I haven't personally experienced it. I remember playing like El Dorito and Halo Online. And when that, as the player base has died down for that game, and now it's really low, but you hop on and like there'd be like 3 or 4 servers that are populated, and 2 of them are playing like Fat Kid, and you're like, well, I don't want to play Fat Kid, but like that's
Yeah.
all they play.
Man, I actually played Halo Online for a little bit back in the day when it sort of like first kicked off before all the like legal troubles and all that stuff. But yeah, it's really a shame what happened because Halo Infinite, like the customization and everything, was so cool, and I loved that like Avalanche redesign where it was all deserty and stuff.
Oh yeah,
That game was awesome.
Diamondback or whatever it's called.
Yeah, and the elites look awesome in that game too.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that was great. And sort of this is kind of a good segue because Halo Online has sprint in it, but it goes off of the Halo 3 engine. And you had a video about what sprinting would be like in Halo 3. So
Yeah.
if you want to just like give a rundown of your general thoughts about like sprint and Halo kind of thing, are you pro or anti-sprint?
Yeah, so I'm one of those people that I think neither side really likes, and I'm just pretty much in the middle.
You're a centrist, a sprint centrist.
I will say, like, I am like pro the idea of getting a classic, like a modern classic Halo game. I think that's something that's very interesting, and it would set Halo apart. But I don't necessarily. I think so many people equate like the not necessarily the downfall, but like the downturn in Halo popularity. They line that up directly with sprint because it happened at the same time, right? Like you could say at once Reach came out and they implemented sprint and all the armor abilities. That is arguably when Halo started. Like we hit our peak in Halo 3. Halo Reach was really popular at the start, and ever since then it's kind of just been like a slow, I don't know, dribble or like a slow down. Like
I hear you.
The population has slowly decreased, and like the popularity of Halo has slowly decreased over time. Obviously, with peaks as like Halo 4 came out and Halo 5 came out, but a lot of people I feel like equate that directly to sprint and armor abilities when in reality I think a lot more of it had to do with so many other things that went wrong with all of those games in particular. Like Halo Reach had a ton of issues, right? Now, personally, I think the sprint in Halo Reach is the worst implementation of it because it was an armor ability that was optional, right? So you could pick sprint, or you could pick jetpack, or you could pick evade in vanilla settings. They kind of went away from that in TU, or you could pick like armor lock and whatnot. And what happened, I feel like in Reach that made sprint and those abilities feel so terrible is all those maps have to be designed in mind with you to either have sprint or not have sprint, have a jetpack or not have a jetpack. So you end up with just a bunch of really average and bland maps that had to account for you having all these different mobility abilities, but at the same time you also have to have the maps play decently enough if you have none of the abilities at the same time, and it just led to kind of like poopy maps. And then Halo 4 and Halo 5 have had so many issues outside of sprint in particular that I think more blame gets put on sprint than I think it needs. Like sprint's not perfect. I don't think Halo needs sprint by any means, but I think if 343 had fixed a lot of the other issues with those games, I don't think sprint would be like the reason that Halo is less popular than it used to be back in Halo 2 or Halo 3 when we didn't have sprint.
Right, I totally feel you. I myself, I want to say I am pro sprint. I know mechanically all the things that are wrong with it, and like it's like one of those things where my brain understands why sprint should be bad and why it is bad. But every time I can't help myself, I'm just so like indoctrinated by it that when I go back and I play something like Halo 3, the very first thing I notice is that I can't sprint and I feel like I'm moving slow.
Yeah.
And I know you could just bump up the base movement speed, but it's just that feeling of like, oh, I can't sprint. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And I think that solution right there is a solution that a lot of people give. And I don't really know if that's even a fantastic solution because you end up with the same issue so if a lot of people don't like sprint because they say it kind of like stretches out maps, which is true. You do have to build, if you're going to build a well-made map in a game with sprint, you should account for the fact that it has sprint, right? If you build a map around a game that has like 150 or 200% base movement speed, the maps should be bigger. If they're the same size as a Halo 3 map, but you move twice as fast, that's going to play pretty poorly. So I don't know if that necessarily would even be the solution. Obviously, though, that does allow you to always have your gun up, which is like a main point that a lot of people have, and I don't really think there's any argument against that. So I don't know.
Do you think that the like smaller and more compact maps of like Halo 3 and 2, do you think those are like inherently better?
Yeah, so I do think that these smaller maps from Halo 2 and 3 are better, but I don't necessarily think that has to do with them being smaller or more compact. And rather, I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that I don't think 343 has been able to really make memorable maps that really latch on in your mind. And I don't necessarily know if that's because they've added sprint, and because of sprint they're having complications with maps, or if it's just due to the fact that they haven't had the amazing map designs that some of the Bungie games had. I don't even know if that's necessarily like a Halo specific issue. In a lot of the more recent Call of Duties or in other multiplayer games, it seems like a lot of modern games kind of struggle with map design. Even a game like Valorant, which a lot of people really love these days, one of the biggest criticisms of Valorant when it came out was like, these maps are really, really bland compared to CS maps. And I don't know if it's just modern games focus so hard on trying to make balanced maps and making sure that gameplay on those maps feels amazing, that you lose kind of some of the fun and some of the charm that older maps had back in the day, when like some maps in older Halo games or older Call of Duty games are extremely unbalanced, but that kind of is what makes them fun. So I don't know.
Yeah, what immediately sorry to cut you off a bit. What immediately springs to mind for me when you're talking about that is something like Halo 3's Last Resort or Halo 2's Zanzibar, where like 343 would never sort of like, for lack of a better term, would never have like the balls to put a giant spinning windmill in the middle of their map and have like a giant animated centerpiece be like the focal point of an arena map.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure. And a part of me wonders if it's just like map fatigue. Like, we've played multiplayer games now for 20, 30 years, and we're at the point where every idea has been tried. So when you see new maps, you're just kind of like, yep, this is like this map, but it does this differently, or it's like this map, but they took this out. Or if it's just 343 isn't willing to take those chances and try really out their ideas that might fail. I mean, some of those Halo 3 maps are terrible. Orbital is an atrocious map, but so many of the other Halo 3 or other Halo 2 maps are good, and it makes up for the fact that some of those maps are utter flops, right? Whereas like,
Yeah,
when I play Halo 5, all the maps are just like, they just exist. There's some that are bad, like Stasis or Torque. Like, I didn't really like those maps. Or what were some of the yeah, you get the point. Like, some of the maps in Halo 5 I can pick out that were bad, but there's just not many that were like super memorable and good. Like, I think a lot of people point towards like Coliseum or Truth, which doesn't really count because it's a remake of Midship, or I think a lot of people like Plaza and stuff like that. But none of those maps are like, when I think of Halo 3, you instantly think Guardian, Sandtrap, Valhalla, The Pit, Last Resort, High Ground. You think of all these different maps that all did totally different things, where in Halo 5, every map just feels like an arena map. You know what I mean?
yeah, totally. And like Halo Reach had some of those like fun style maps too as well, like Condemned with like the big like low gravity center of the map, just like fun innovative things where it doesn't necessarily have to be like every map doesn't need to be symmetrical Slayer map that's been like player tested for MLG players to make sure that they can all head glitch properly.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing. Back in the day, in the trilogy of Halo, they just made maps, man. They didn't care if they were competitive or if the person who's getting a 50 in Team Slayer thinks that this is a good map. They just made maps that they thought were fun, that they thought looked cool, that they thought had interesting ideas. Where definitely in Halo 5 specifically, all those maps were tested out the yin yang to make sure that they played well for esports, right? And that's all good and dandy if you're going to try and be a pro Halo 5 player. But for everyone else that plays on those maps in matchmaking and we play casually with our buddies, it hurts the experience for everyone else when you focus so hard on trying to make a competitive game. And that was one thing that Bungie didn't really care about. They didn't really care if their game was competitive. They just put out a game that they thought were fun, and then they said, hey, yeah, if you want to turn this into an esport, go ahead and adjust some of the settings. You can do that, but this is the game that we made, and this is what we're giving you, and you can either take that or leave it. And you can kind of see that with their design now with Destiny. Destiny PvP is a mess, right? Because it has so many overpowered things and nothing's balanced. But that's just Bungie game design, right? They just make things that they think are fun, and you either enjoy it or you don't, right?
Yeah. Sort of to cap off our talk about the original Halo games and that sort of stuff, and it might seem a little sort of out of left field, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Halo 3 Anniversary and whether you think they sort of should have done it or not. I personally think they definitely should have done it. So I'll let you do your piece, and then after I can kind of give my my pitch for why they should have done it or why they should still do it even now.
For sure, yeah. So this might actually be a good discussion point, because I think we don't need a Halo 3 Anniversary in the slightest. So, well, I should say this: if they were going to redo the campaign with like blur style cinematics like they did for Halo 2 Anniversary, I'm all for that. I think that's cool, and the cutscenes in Halo 2 Anniversary are extremely cool. But for the game itself, Halo 3, it really has aged fine. It still looks fine for a game. Like, it obviously isn't cutting edge playing it in 2020. It doesn't look like Cyberpunk's going to look later this year, but it looks fine. It functions, and I think one thing that you lose a lot when you when you would remake it with a Halo 3 Anniversary is you're going to lose all the charm that actually made Halo 3. And we saw that with Halo 2 Anniversary. And assuming that they do something similar where they take the modern engine, they take Slipspace, right? And they try to kind of recreate Halo 3 in it, you lose all the charm that made Halo 3 what it was. And that, because like when you play Halo 2 Anniversary, multiplayer specifically, I'm not talking about the campaign because that runs on the same engine and whatnot, but when you play the multiplayer, you're just playing a weird toned down Halo 4, and it doesn't feel very good. And I have a whole ton of issues with Halo 2 Anniversary, but I don't even think that they should bother wasting time to try and do something like that with Halo 3, when instead they could, if they wanted to. I think the main reason people want Halo 3 Anniversary, well, not the main reason, but a big reason is people want a modern style classic Halo game, right? They should just make a new game. They don't need to remake Halo 3 to do that, because we've already played Halo 3 for countless hours. Just making it look a little, assuming all they did was make it look prettier and that was about it, at that point, I don't really see that really pulling people back in for hundreds or thousands of hours. People will come back in, they'll get their fix for 10, 20 hours. They'll be like, yep, it's still Halo 3, the same Halo 3 I played back in the day. And it'll kind of be the same as when they brought Halo 3 to PC. People jump back in, they get their nostalgia fix, and then they fall off. Whereas if they do something like Halo 2 Anniversary, where they change everything and it's not actually Halo 3 anymore, then kind of at that point, just make a different game. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
All right, so I mean, a lot of that is valid, especially your points about how it would sort of like lose some of that charm, especially if they had to sort of try to recreate it with the Slipspace engine rather than going back and using Blam. I think they used for Halo 3, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Blam all the way up until now, isn't it? Halo 5 was like some funky combination, wasn't it? But I think,
but yeah. So in terms of the campaign, I would love to see a remastered Halo 3 campaign at the very least with those blur cinematics. But my main pitch for why I think there should be one is going off of what they did with Halo 2 Anniversary. I don't think it just has to be a simple graphical update. If you actually look at what they did with Halo 2 Anniversary, they added new weapons with the AR and the silenced SMG, new vehicles with the Hornet, they added new maps, they added new customization options for the players, and new Forge. Like Halo 2 didn't even have Forge, and they added like scriptable Forge into it. So in my brain, when I picture like a Halo 3 Anniversary, it's got, you know, the ODST weapons that they have already added in now. It's got like new weapons, new vehicles, potentially like a custom browser, a revamped Forge. Like I feel like all of those things wouldn't be too realistic to not expect to be in a Halo 3 Anniversary. And I think if you add all of those elements into it, that it could be like a really worthy successor, as well as personally, and this is just like a personal thing, it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth for them to do an anniversary edition for the first two and then just like leave out Halo 3, which was like the end of the original trilogy. Like that was like at one point going to be the end of Halo. I don't know, it seems weird to not sort of like finish the fight, so to speak, with a Halo 3 anniversary. Plus, also Halo 3 was the highest grossing Halo game of all time, still is. No Halo game since or before it sold more copies, so I think financially it would do really well because they could market that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think some of that stuff's unnecessary, and I think some of that, like you said, they can still use, especially with Halo 3 MCC still actively getting some support. A lot of that stuff they could put into Halo 3 MCC. I don't really think you're going to be able to upgrade the Forge very much unless they somehow ported like Halo Online's Forge. I don't know how much you use that, but
I played around with the Halo Online Forge. It was pretty amazing too, with like the different texture options and stuff.
yeah, it's like it's not quite at the level of Halo 5's Forge, but I feel like it's probably like the second strongest Forge that we've had. But
Oh yeah,
I still think, like, in terms of new weapons and new customization and stuff, I think all of that stuff is stuff that they could put into Halo 3 MCC. Whereas, like, I don't know. I if they were gonna spend all that time to fully remaster it, at that point, I'd just rather see a new classic style spin-off game and get totally new experiences rather than like somewhat new experiences that look a little prettier. But that might just be my outlook on it. I do think you're right. I think it would sell like hotcakes. I don't think you're wrong at all about that.
yeah. No, it's good to sort of get different perspectives on stuff, and a lot of what you're saying like does make sense. I can almost agree with if they're gonna put the resources into a game like that, that it might be better to just build something new from the ground up. But I kind of feel like that's what Infinite is, and that Halo 3 Anniversary could be like something that comes after, and maybe won't take them, half a decade to build because they have some groundwork to build off of already.
Yeah, that's another thing too, I would say, right? If they were to do this as a not necessarily a side project, but if they could do this while still supporting Infinite or while working on a new game, I'm not going to complain, right? I just don't want to see this take the place of like our next Halo game, because who knows, man? That one might come out in 2030.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't want to play Halo Infinite for 10 years, play Halo 3 Anniversary for another 10 years, and then when I'm like 50, get Halo Infinite 2.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm getting too old for these games already, dude. I'm gonna be dead by the time Infinite comes out.
At this rate, who knows, man? Especially with the good old virus, we might all be.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like we had a good discussion there about that. We have good points on both sides, so we can kind of just I'm comfortable leaving it there, and people can kind of draw their own conclusions.
Yeah, for sure.
Another point that I had was you uploaded a video. It was what was it called? Gears of War, but it's Halo, and it was about third-person Halo. And I don't know if you remember this, but in OG Halo Reach, if you were rewatching a match in theater, there was an option to watch it in third person, and it still had all your HUD and stuff. And I used to just go watch Halo Reach, like rewatch my Halo Reach gameplay of Slayer matches in third person, and imagine how cool it would be to play the game that way. So it's really cool to see people having like that same idea, because I think third person Halo would be so cool to be able to like see your own Spartan that you customized, but I know it would not work in competitive. So I think it'd be cool to have it as like toggleable, is that the right word? Custom game option in Infinite.
Yeah.
So do you like just give me your rundown on the whole third person thing?
Yeah. No, I'm kind of admittedly I don't think I played around a whole ton in Halo Reach Theater, so I guess I didn't know that it kept your HUD and whatnot. But I'm totally on board. I think it's by no means like a competitive mode or should really be the main focus of Halo. But yeah, in a custom game setting, I think an option like that should 100% be there, because just think of all the cool things that people can create using that. That offers a whole new camera model and viewpoint that custom game creators and forgers can keep in mind when they're creating maps and custom games. And it just increases all the cool things that they can create. And one game that kind of did this in the past that I think Halo Infinite should do, especially if it's going to be this long project that we have forever, right? Is in Modern Warfare 2, and they haven't brought this back, but Modern Warfare 2 had the third person playlist. I don't know if you ever played that, but
Oh yeah, I do actually remember that. Now that you bring it
yeah,
up, I didn't until just
it,
now.
it was pretty jank, and it wasn't like it by no means was the main focus of the game, and a lot of things were pretty broken because everything was balanced around everything in that game was broken anyways, but the game was designed around being a first person game. But then if you wanted to mess around and play third person Call of Duty, there was a playlist for it, and maybe that's something we get in Infinite, where hey, if you want to play third person BTB, so be it, cue it up, like you do you. But if you don't want to do that, then by no means is that going to hinder your regular first person shooter experience. But I do think it's cool. I think you can see your Spartan while you're playing, and there's a lot of cool things that you can do and you can see and you can experience in third person that you don't in first person, obviously.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, where you can just at will, and in all the multiplayer, you can flip between third and first person whenever you feel like. And basically what it turns into is you play third person if you're actually being serious, but if you want to be like immersive and cinematic or just for fun, you go first person. But they do have things like the Ewok hunt mode. I don't know if you're familiar with Battlefront 2, but Ewok hunt is basically like Infection, where the humans are stormtroopers and they're on Endor at night and they have like flashlights on their guns and stuff, and the zombies are Ewoks.
Oh, okay.
And for that one, the stormtroopers are locked, or at least I believe they are. They're locked into first person. Give it more of like a creepy, like feeling.
Yeah,
And then the Ewoks are third person.
yeah.
As
So
well. Like,
there's tons of cool things you could do like that, right? So
yeah, so the precedent is there for the option for both.
yeah, and I think I played the first Battlefront, and I think you could swap between the two at will when you were just playing regular multiplayer. But when they brought Grand Theft Auto 5 to PC, isn't that a thing you can do in that game too, is switch back and forth between third person and first person?
Yeah.
So there's
Absolutely.
been games that do it. So yeah, the precedent is definitely there. And I think it would be cool to see it in Halo for sure.
Yeah, and in the same vein, I think just for funsies, right? I think it'd be really cool to have first person vehicles in Halo.
Oh, for sure. Have you played around with any of the mods on PC that lets you drive in first person?
I actually haven't. I'm not really big onto PC Halo. I actually only have a laptop, so I wouldn't really be able to run it.
Yeah, it's a funky experience, but when Reach came out, well, one, there was like a weird bug where it would just happen, but there was also mods that people put out that you could drive in first person, and it's different. Did you, if you ever played the Forza Horizon game that has that Warthog level? I mean, it's like kind of like that.
I haven't, unfortunately.
But with worse driving mechanics, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I could see how it would get really complicated really fast with like, well, what does a first-person Banshee look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've admittedly only done it with a Warthog, so.
Yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. Would be like, oh, a first-person Warthog would work fine, and then you're like, well, what about like a Wraith?
Yeah. No, for sure. It makes more sense with like the Warthog or like a Mongoose or a Ghost even, but I think the rest of those you probably just get some type of like HUD, I would imagine. Especially with them being like futuristic vehicle, like sci-fi vehicles, you'd just get. So it would be like, it wouldn't be the third person model that we currently get, but it wouldn't be like straight up. Well, it would be for yeah, I don't know. You get my point.
Yeah, totally. So we'll do like one more little point here, kind of winding it down. Put out a video this morning about custom game options for Halo Infinite and what I would like to see there. I had some ideas like player size and spawn traits. So when you first spawn in, you have like boosted shields for a couple seconds or whatever to prevent spawn killing or just stuff like that. Do you have any ideas for just like any off the wall, doesn't matter how crazy, like what would you like to see in Halo Infinite custom games in terms of like settings that we could alter?
Oh god, I feel like that's something I'd have to really spend some time and think about. Trying to think of like custom game options off the top of my head that we haven't necessarily had before. And you kind of mentioned a couple of the easy ones, right? Like player size. I really think in Halo Infinite, man, we got to be able to have bigger than 16-person lobbies, right? Especially with this running on next gen hardware and PCs. Like, I'm hoping you can have like 64-person lobbies or something like that, because there'll be some really, really cool stuff that the community is able to create if you can have like full scale large matches, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, I just tried to cut you off a bit there, but you know what's really funny is when I said player size, I didn't mean like lobby size. I meant the physical like size of your
Oh,
Spartan.
gotcha. Okay, they did.
But yeah, no, increased lobby size would be amazing.
Yeah, they did the player size thing in Halo Online, and some of those were really fun. You'd have these like ginormous Spartans walking around. I remember there was like one mode in particular that people would play was on standoff on that map, and like you'd just be this ginormous Spartan, and everyone would be down shooting at him. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I would see there's simple like fun stuff like that I would love to see in the game. There was another one I just thought of as well. Shoot, what was it? Who knows? It's gone.
Yeah,
A fleeting thought.
I don't think that we'll get this, but I would love to see more of like if you play a game, and so many modern games have gone away from this that I pretty much don't expect it, but like if you play like an older Call of Duty game on PC, or you play like Counter-Strike or any of those games that are a little bit more open on the modding front, like, and people can host their own servers and you just get like the wackiest game modes, I think that would be super fun in Halo. Now I don't think we'll get that, because I don't think we're gonna get like straight up full modding support, since the game is going to be on Xboxes and PC, but that would be something that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be good. Like almost like server browser as well, where like not just a custom browser where you can like start up like a game and have people join, but maybe like a permanent server where the host doesn't need to be there.
Yeah,
might even be the thing. You could just put on like a playlist.
Yeah, exactly.
Then people could just join like, oh, I'm gonna join the Fat Kid playlist that just does Fat Kid and rotates the maps all the time.
Yep, for sure.
Could see stuff like that really working out.
Yeah, and it
like a permanent.
Admittedly, that is a feature that pretty much no modern games do anymore. Like Counter-Strike is the only one that I can really think of that still even has a straight up server browser, and that's just Valve being Valve. So like I don't think that's something we're gonna see in Halo Infinite, but it is something that I think would be pretty cool, because like I don't know how much you probably haven't messed with it too much, but if you play things like Halo Custom Edition back in the day, I mean that's how it is. People just host servers and you can join into some of like the wonkiest stuff, but some of that stuff offers like you can take the base game of Halo or Counter-Strike or the older Call of Duties that support the modding, and you can create like totally different games inside of that game, and the community can really be creative with it beyond just regular custom game settings.
Yeah, it would be nice to see 343 sort of hand over more tools to the players. Like one thing that they did in Halo 5 that I absolutely love is vehicle welding. Like people have done amazing stuff with vehicle welding. Like they basically I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. I'm sure you are, but you can like make an X-wing out of forged pieces, and then you weld a Banshee to it, and then you can fly the Banshee, and it's like you're flying the X-wing. So even if they just like if they got that working better because it's so clunky, if they had vehicle welding that was like seamless, and maybe even like player welding or just other options like that, the community could really go crazy with what they could do.
For sure. Yeah. I think one thing that was really cool in Halo 5 too is like some people call them like the modded weapons, but I think it's just like glitched weapons where like people are able to combine the weapon traits of multiple different weapons and create all sorts of funky weapons for people to use. I always thought that was pretty fun in custom games too.
Yeah, kind of like Halo 5 is like the weapon pad glitching as well, where you can have like the Spartan laser that shoots rockets and stuff like that.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, well, that's just about going to do it. I want to thank you again for coming along. Link to Arrrash's channel in the description below. Make sure you go show him some support. And thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I had a fun time.